has some of the harshest anti-abortion laws in the world, and that's something these demonstrators in Ireland want to end.
Well, I'm here for them, for my daughters, 2 children here, so we're here to support their rights to make choices for themselves.
Abortion is banned under the Irish Constitution's 8th Amendment. The only exception is when a woman's life is in danger. Otherwise, the fetus has to be carried to full term, even if it has died. Abortion is also not allowed if the pregnancy results from rape, incest, or if the fetus has severe abnormalities. Anyone who breaks the law faces a 14-year prison sentence. The restrictions have led many Irish women to seek abortions abroad, mainly in the UK. But a campaign to change the law is strengthening. It reached a crescendo after Ireland's decision in 2015 to legalise gay marriage, and the election of the country's first Prime Minister, who's openly gay and an ethnic minority. The government then appointed a parliamentary advisory committee to investigate Ireland's abortion laws. It overwhelmingly recommended changes to allow what it called unrestricted access to abortion. But the government has opted to hold a referendum in 2018 before making any changes. These demonstrators believe this is just a waste of time and the laws should be changed immediately. But others disagree, and the issue remains deeply divisive in a country trying to balance its conservative Catholic tradition with the promise of a progressive future. Shoaib Hassan, The Newsmakers.
Well, to discuss this now, I'm joined from Dublin by Cora Sherlock. She's a lawyer and spokesperson for the Pro-Life campaign. And also in Dublin, Emma Hendrick. She's a member of the People Before Profit Party. I thank you both for joining us. Cora Sherlock, let me begin with you first. In a democracy, isn't this the right thing to do, to put it to a vote come next year? Hasn't the Prime Minister made the right choice?
I think that in a democracy, what we should do, and the primary thing that a democracy does, is to protect the rights of every human being living in that democracy. And what a referendum on the 8th Amendment would do is to offer people the chance to remove a human right from our Constitution, to remove the right to life of babies in the womb. That's completely anti-democratic. There's nothing democratic about removing a human right from the Constitution. So that wouldn't be right. Now, when you say that we are having a referendum next year, there is a bit of difficulty in that, because it's true that the Prime Minister has announced that there will be a referendum, but at the same time we're having a government committee ongoing at the moment to decide whether a referendum should take place. So there is a little bit of confusion, it seems, which really should be clarified by the government.
Cora, are you referring to the Citizens' Assembly?
No, I'm referring to the Oireachtas Committee, to the Government Committee, which is currently taking place. It was on yesterday, it will be on next Wednesday, and for a number of weeks. And that looks at the results of the Citizens' Assembly to decide whether we should have this referendum. Just in your introduction there, you talked about the case of Savita Halappanavar, the tragedy where she lost her life in a hospital in Ireland. It's worth noting that the 3 independent reports prepared by experts into her death found that Ireland's lack of abortion was not responsible. And I think that that's something that unfortunately went out around the world at the time in headlines. It was only many months later that the official reports were prepared, which found that she lost her life and she lost the life of her baby to mismanaged sepsis, and not the fact that abortion was not available here. It is a very important point, because there's a lot of people who aren't aware of the true facts surrounding her loss.
Emma Hendrick, is next year a big year for you, come May or June, when this referendum will happen? Tell me why you feel the majority of Irish people will decide to finally legalise abortion.
Well, when the referendum happens, it doesn't mean that there will be legalised abortion in Ireland, because the Protection of Life During Pregnancy Act is still there from 2013. But what it will mean is that the Oireachtas can then legislate for abortion access in Ireland. You know, the reality is at the moment is up to 4,000 women a year are travelling to the UK to have an abortion. Abortions are happening. Women should be able to have their abortions at home in their own country without the threat of a 14-year prison sentence hanging over them. You know, we need to be able to trust women to make their own choices, whether they decide to have a child or not have a child. And regarding Savisha, you know, Savisha died from sepsis, that's true, but it was sepsis created from the mismanagement of her miscarriage, where she was miscarrying, and because there was still a heartbeat, she was told that she couldn't have an abortion because Ireland was a Catholic country, you know, and a woman died because of this. It's absolutely disgraceful that women are put through hell just to have bodily autonomy and rights over their own body.
Let me ask Cora. Cora, is your opposition to this referendum even happening rooted in your understanding of your Catholic values?
Absolutely not. I haven't mentioned religion at all. I never mention religion. I always find that it's pro-choice campaigners in Ireland who bring up religion. And I think they often do that because they don't want to talk about the reality of what abortion means. The fact that a baby would lose his or her life in every abortion. That's what happens in every abortion. And let's think about what that baby is. The baby's life begins at fertilization. The baby's heart starts beating at 3 weeks. He or she has a nose, a mouth at just 6 weeks. The baby has organs at 8 weeks. This is a human being, and we can't simply disregard his or her rights. What we hear from the pro-choice campaign in Ireland at the moment is constant talk about bodily autonomy, but that tiny human being has a body too, and it's a body that's growing. It's protected under the 8th Amendment at the moment. I think it's very disturbing that there would be a suggestion that we would introduce a referendum to try and remove the protection that exists for that baby at the moment. Religion is very much a red herring in this discussion. Like I say, it's only ever brought up to avoid talking about the human rights violations that abortion has caused around the world. Just to mention one, the situation where babies are often born alive in so-called botched abortions. This is where babies survive the abortion procedure, but because they were intended for abortion, because they weren't intended to survive, they're simply left to die alone in hospital corners. That happened to 66 babies in 1 year alone in the UK. And one of those babies, at least, according to the official report, survived for 10 hours. That's a human rights violation that we don't want to see happen in Ireland. But any interference with the 8th Amendment would cause violations.
Let me come in for a second here. If you're so confident that so many in Ireland believe as you do, and you say, you know, religion's a red herring here, you're saying that you're being straw-manned when it comes to this argument. If so many people believe as you do, and they believe in the sanctity of the fetus being a baby from the very beginning, then why not put it to a referendum, and why not put it to the test if this is what so many Irish people believe?
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons why we shouldn't do that. Firstly, as I've said, because Ireland is a democratic state, and the very notion of democracy goes against abortion, because abortion means ending a human life, and that's completely contradictory to everything we have fought for in Ireland as a country since the establishment of our nation. The second reason why we shouldn't hold a referendum is because there is a problem with the media in Ireland at the moment. That's just a reality. To give you an example of just 1 month alone on our national state broadcaster here, which is funded by the Irish people, it's tax funded, 81 minutes during a month was given to the pro-choice side of the discussion, and just 4 minutes during that same month to the pro-life side of the discussion. So that's a clear evidence of bias there, which makes it very difficult for the public to hear the full facts. The comments that I've made already, things about babies being born alive and left to die after botched abortions, these happen, but they're not being told to the public because the media, unfortunately, the mainstream media in Ireland doesn't spread them. Similarly, when we hear about Ireland being an unsafe place for women to be pregnant, that is something that has spread over the last number of years. It's been allowed to spread by the pro-choice campaign, who've used it very effectively in their arguments. It's a disgrace because the medical profession in Ireland is so extremely efficient in looking after women. Okay. We are a world leader in terms of looking after women during pregnancy. So those are all reasons why we shouldn't have a referendum.
Let me bring in Emma here. Emma, there's an Ipsos poll that asked people, without a woman's life being threatened, without fetal abnormality, just an abortion on request, 67% of people in that Ipsos poll were against abortion, right? So it suggests that when it comes to the referendum, people are thinking in terms of conditionality. This isn't a clear yes or no. Usually it's a yes but, or it's a no but. With all of that in mind, How would you like the ballot to be worded come next year, Emma?
I would like the ballot to be worded on, do you want to repeal the 8th Amendment and want the Oireachtas to legislate for abortion access in Ireland? I think if we put barriers in place for abortion access, women will continue to, not meet these standards. We can't keep pitting people against each other. There's no such thing as a good abortion or a bad abortion. A woman decides to have an abortion because she feels it's the right decision for her to make. And just when we're talking about, human rights, the UN have said that Ireland's abortion laws are cruel and inhumane and degrading to women. We are forcing women that are suffering from fatal fetal abnormalities to travel to a different jurisdiction to have an abortion, and then they have to come home. They're wanted pregnancies. These women don't want to have to leave their families to go and travel. I think polls, if you look at the history of polls over the last 2 years, people want more liberal access to abortion. And I really believe that a referendum will pass. And as Cora keeps saying, it is a democracy, so let us have our vote. Nobody under the age of 52 years of age has been able to vote in a referendum regarding abortion. So nobody of childbearing age has had a voice or have a vote. So let us have our vote.
Cora, are you convinced by any of that?
No, not at all. I'm not convinced. And I think that, again, I always expect pro-choice campaigners to talk about the UN, but I noticed that Emma didn't talk about the fact that babies are born alive and left to die after botched abortions. This is something that the UN has consistently ignored as well. It's also worth noting that when she talks about the UN giving out about Ireland's pro-life laws, which have saved tens of thousands of lives since the 8th Amendment was introduced, it's not actually the UN, the entire UN, it's the UN Human Rights Committee. These are committees that are made up of pro-choice campaigners. That's just the reality. If you look at the people who are on the committee, their history is to campaign for abortion. So it's no surprise that they would criticise Ireland. But I would like to ask Emma, what time limits does she support? How far into the pregnancy does she think that a baby should lose his or her rights? And what pro-choice campaigners in this country often say is they use the phrase as early as possible, as late as necessary, but they're very unwilling to actually put a time limit on when they think a baby actually becomes a baby and when that baby is deserving of rights. So maybe she could address that and also address how she feels about babies being born alive and left to die after botched abortions, something that happens throughout the world, something that could very easily happen in Ireland.
Let me allow Emma to address the first one, because this is an interesting one, because people vary in terms of that particular cutoff date. Is there a cutoff time period for you? And would you accept that level of conditionality? What do you think, Emma?
I think time limits are always thrown out as a red herring. So, in reality, 92% of abortions happen before 13 weeks. 0.02% of abortions happen in the third trimester. This is in the case of a woman's life being at risk or a fatal fetal abnormality. So let's talk about reality here. No woman is 8.5 months pregnant and suddenly decides she wants to have an abortion. If that was the case, what would happen would be there would be a termination of her pregnancy. That means she would have a section and the child would be born alive. There's nobody advocating here for abortions up to 9 months when there is a viable fetus there. That's just not the reality of what happens.
Okay, so we have one side saying using Catholicism in the argument is a red herring, and the other side saying the time limits, that's a red herring, both feeling strawmanned when it comes to that. Cora, let me ask you about the culture wars, broadly speaking. From the outside looking in, there's an openly gay Prime Minister. This is 2 years after a referendum on gay marriage. Therefore, there seems to be an air of inevitability coming to next year that Ireland will legalise abortion, and it suggests that the country is moving in a more liberal direction. Is that how you see it, Cora?
Well, what I would say about that is progress and abortion do not go hand in hand. What we know about the baby in the womb now, as compared to what we knew about it in 1983 when the Eighth Amendment was put in place, is radically different. We know now those things that I've said. The baby's heart starts beating at 3 weeks. People see scan images where they can see the baby's face. We know that this is a human being deserving of protection. There's nothing progressive about ending human life, nothing progressive about ending a vulnerable human life, a baby who cannot speak up for him or herself. And I mean, the violations that I'm talking about, things that have happened in the UK, babies being born alive, also in Canada, 400 of them being born alive and left to die over a 10-year period in Canada. I don't hear the pro-choice campaign in Ireland stepping up to talk about that. What they will always say is really what Emma has said, is that it's not happening in reality, but it is happening in reality. And once you introduce abortion into a country, once you remove the Eighth Amendment, what you find is that people's attitudes change. They feel that abortion is something that's acceptable, that's normal. Okay. That's what happens. In the UK, there were 190,000 abortions in 2015, and 98% of those were on social grounds. So abortion just becomes something that is seen as something normal, rather than the ending of a human life, which is what it really is.
Emma, final word for you. We're running out of time. I have to move on. In less than 30 seconds, if you don't mind, please, Emma.
You know, I don't believe that any woman should be forced to stay pregnant against her will. The reality is abortions are happening. They are happening. Up to 3 women a day take the abortion pill in Ireland. They have a 14-year prison sentence hanging over them. We need to protect women. We need to trust women to make their own choices and allow them to access healthcare at home without the fear of criminalisation hanging over them. You know, it is their own choice. We need to support them in their choices, whether that's deciding to have a child or not having a child. And we need to trust that a woman is the best person to make that decision for herself.
Okay. It seems as if that referendum will happen. All the best available evidence shows that it will come May or June next year. We hope to speak to both of you in the not too distant future once again. Cora Sherlock and Emma Hendrick. I've got to move on. I thank you both for joining us on the Newsmakers.